The key doesn't work?" Claudia's voice cracked through the night air, sharp enough to cut glass. I watched her twist the shiny brass key again and again, each failed click echoing like a drumbeat of humiliation against the stillness of my ranch. Now, if you've never seen a grown woman in pearls try to dominate a padlock at 11 o'clock at night, let me tell you, it's a sight. Headlights from her Lexus poured across my gravel drive like stage lights, illuminating her perfectly pressed blazer, the clipboard tucked under one arm, and the fury simmering just below her manicured exterior. My wife leaned against the porch post, coffee mug in hand, quiet as a cat, eyes never leaving Claudia's shaking hands. Claudia wasn't just here to test a key. She was here to make a statement. And when the lock refused to bow to her authority, the cracks in her empire began to show. Let me back up. For weeks I'd been receiving letters, typed on HOA letterhead, signed in Claudia's bold cursive, that insisted my property remained subject to master access rights. According to her, the HOA had purchased universal keys that opened every gate in the subdivision, mine included. Now, the thing about my ranch is simple. It isn't part of their subdivision. Never has been. The boundary line is marked by a stand of pines, a creek, and, apparently, Claudia's imagination. I'd gone to 2 board meetings to correct the record, only to be waved off with smirks and condescending nods. Community integrity, Claudia had lectured me, requires consistency. We can't have outliers. Translation, she didn't like that my ranch didn't answer to her. So, when I installed a new steel gate, heavier than anything she could have dreamed of, and padlocked it with my own key, I knew it was only a matter of time before she tried something. What I didn't expect was the grand theatrics, the nighttime invasion, the master key she flashed around like it was Excalibur, and the certainty in her voice that the lock would yield. Click, click, click. Each failure made her shoulders stiffer, her pearls bobbing with indignation. "You've tampered with community property," she hissed, spinning on her heels to glare at me. The beams from her headlights caught the edge of her clipboard, and for a moment she looked like a judge about to slam down a gavel. "This gate falls under HOA jurisdiction. My key should work." I didn't move from the porch. That's my lock, my key, my land. The HOA doesn't own so much as an inch of this driveway. Claudia's mouth twitched, a smile fighting with rage. "We'll see about that." She pointed at the gate as if it had betrayed her. "I'll be returning with official enforcement. Now, you have to picture it. This woman, in her 50s, hair perfectly coiffed, heels sinking into the gravel, standing under the stark wash of her headlights, trying to look like an authority figure while reality unraveled around her." My wife sipped her coffee, unfazed. Later, she told me she was timing how long it would take Claudia to crack. 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Not bad. But here's where the story really deepens. Claudia didn't just leave angry, she left humiliated. And humiliation, in the HOA world, is blood in the water. The next day, my mailbox held another letter. This one was heavier, printed on thicker paper, as if weight could substitute for legitimacy. "Notice of violation," it began, citing Section 4B of the HOA bylaws, fencing and gate uniformity. The letter claimed my gate violated aesthetic continuity and ordered me to replace it with a standard-issue community gate. I read it aloud at the breakfast table, and my wife nearly choked on her toast. "They think they can tell you what gate you can use on property they don't even own?" "That's the plan," I said. "Claudia's trying to regulate me into submission." So I did what any sane person would do. I photocopied my deed, highlighted the property lines, and sent it back with a note. "Not subject to HOA jurisdiction. Kindly stop wasting paper." Of course, that didn't stop her. By the weekend, word had spread through the neighborhood grapevine that Claudia had caught me tampering with a community lock and that legal action was pending. At the grocery store, a neighbor asked me in hushed tones whether I'd really been breaking into my own property. Another, grinning, confessed he couldn't wait to see Claudia finally trip over her own rules. And that's exactly what she did. Because the more Claudia doubled down, the more people started whispering. Her master key hadn't just failed at my gate, it failed in front of witnesses. My wife's calm presence, my refusal to bite, and Claudia's very public meltdown turned her from queen bee to neighborhood gossip in a single night. But she wasn't going to take it lying down. That night replayed in my mind as I sat on the porch the following evening, listening to crickets and sipping sweet tea. The smell of cut grass hung in the cool air, and the silence was peaceful, until I spotted headlights creeping down the road again. Claudia. She parked at the edge of the drive this time, careful not to come all the way up. From the distance I could see her phone lit in her hand, her lips moving fast, her pearls glinting in the glow. She wasn't testing keys anymore. She was calling backup, and I knew, right then, the battle over my gate was only beginning. Those 7 words from the deputy cut through the night like a spotlight, brighter than the red and blue strobes splashing against my ranch walls. Claudia's mouth hung open, pearls trembling on her chest as if even they were embarrassed for her. The gravel under her heels crunched as she shifted, desperate to spin the narrative back in her favor. Now, let me tell you something. If you've never watched an HOA president try to argue with law enforcement on your driveway, you're missing out. There's an art to it, a mix of theater and desperation, and Claudia was laying it on thick. Her Lexus sat crooked on the side of the road, headlights still blazing into my gate, while 2 deputies stood between her and me, arms folded, waiting for the truth to settle. My wife, cool as ever, leaned in the doorway behind me, cordless phone still in her hand like a trophy. She'd been the one to answer dispatch, calmly dismantling Claudia's frantic 911 call with nothing more than a deed, a map, and her steady voice. And the best part? Half the neighborhood had wandered down, lured by the flashing lights, standing just far enough away to watch Claudia unravel. But let's rewind a few minutes. The phone had rung just as I spotted Claudia's car nosing back down the gravel road, her high beams stabbing through the trees. My wife answered before I could even stand. "Yes, this is the ranch property," she said smoothly, then listened for a beat. I watched her eyebrow lift as the operator relayed Claudia's accusation. Trespasser on HOA land. "Oh, is that so?" my wife said, reaching for the folder we kept by the kitchen desk. She spread the papers across the counter like a magician dealing cards. "Here's the deed, dated 15 years back. Boundary maps from the county. Recorded easement lines. No HOA jurisdiction." She didn't raise her voice once. Just facts, delivered in that calm, cutting tone that makes liars trip over themselves. By the time the deputies arrived, dispatch already knew the truth. Claudia, however, didn't. She met the officers at the gate with the righteous fury of someone convinced that sheer volume could substitute for evidence. This man has installed an unauthorized barrier," she insisted, jabbing a finger toward my lock. "The HOA has master access rights. He's interfering with community safety." One deputy, tall and broad-shouldered, let her finish before answering. "Ma'am, we've reviewed the county records. This gate is on private property." That's when her pearls trembled. "I am the HOA president," she declared, as if the title were a badge of law. "We have authority. We must maintain integrity." The second deputy cut in, his tone dry. "Authority doesn't extend past the subdivision line, and this gate isn't in your subdivision." From my porch, I could see neighbors exchanging looks, whispers cutting through the hum of insects. Folks who had once nodded along at her speeches now seemed eager to watch the queen bee sting herself. One man chuckled under his breath. Another pulled out his phone, angling for a discreet video. My wife leaned against the doorframe, coffee mug in hand again, because of course she'd brewed a fresh cup for the show. I decided to join the party. Stepping down from the porch, I walked slowly, letting the crunch of gravel punctuate the silence. "Claudia," I said evenly, "this has gone far enough. You tried your key. It didn't work. You called the cops. They've confirmed what I've been saying for weeks. It's time to let this go." Her eyes darted toward the gathered crowd, panic flickering behind her practiced mask. "You're tampering with community safety," she muttered, weaker now. "There could be emergencies. What if first responders need access?" The deputy shook his head. "Then they contact the property owner. That's the law." It should have ended there, but Claudia wasn't built to walk away gracefully. She took one last swing, louder now, trying to salvage the performance. "This man is a danger to our neighborhood. He undermines the rules that keep us safe." The words rang out, but the effect was hollow. You could almost hear the shift in the air as neighbors stopped seeing her as their protector and started seeing her as what she was. A woman desperate to hold on to control that was never hers. One deputy turned to me. "Sir, everything checks out. You're good here. Just maybe lock your mailbox for a while." He smirked, a quiet acknowledgement that I might be in for more paper warfare. I nodded. Wouldn't be the first time. Claudia's face tightened, her jaw working as she searched for one last card to play. None came. She gathered her clipboard, snapped her car door shut harder than necessary, and sped off into the night, tires spitting gravel in her wake. But here's the thing about people like Claudia. Retreat doesn't mean surrender. It means regroup. As the deputies left and neighbors drifted back to their homes, I stood by the gate, breathing in the cool night air, the smell of dust and pine mixing under the pulsing afterimage of red and blue lights. My wife joined me, sliding her arm through mine. "You know she's not done," she whispered. I nodded, eyes still fixed on the road where her taillights had vanished. Because I knew she was right. And sure enough, the very next morning, a new letter arrived. Thicker paper, bolder ink. This time, it wasn't just a violation notice. It was a threat. "That's impossible," Claudia whispered, staring at the new sign bolted to my gate. Her pearls caught the morning light, trembling like they'd lost their anchor. You can't own that." The words tasted sweeter than the fresh autumn air rolling across the pasture. The sun had barely crested the pines, dew still clinging to the grass, but this moment, this reveal, was years in the making. My wife stood beside me, arms crossed, a faint smile tugging at her lips as Claudia's empire cracked right there on the gravel. The HOA's vaunted master key dangled uselessly in her hand, no more powerful than a piece of scrap metal, and for the first time, the neighborhood queen bee looked less like royalty and more like a wasp that had flown headfirst into a window pane. But let me take you back to how we got here. After the police showdown, Claudia doubled down on her paper war. Letters escalated from notices of violation to full-blown cease and desist orders, each one citing some obscure bylaw about community cohesion or easement access. Problem was, those bylaws stopped at the subdivision boundary. My ranch didn't show up anywhere in her binders of rules, no matter how many times she waved them around at board meetings. Still, she had a weapon. The easement road. The HOA claimed it was theirs to manage because it cut across a thin strip of land that wasn't clearly deeded. That's when my wife had her idea. "What if we just buy it?" she said one night, sipping her tea like she was discussing curtains instead of a chess move that could topple an empire. I laughed at first, but she was right. We did our homework, county records, dusty maps, even an old survey tucked in the courthouse archives. Turned out the strip of land with the easement still belonged to a retired farmer who'd moved 2 counties over. Forgotten by most, ignored by Claudia. But not by us. A few signatures, a handshake, and a modest check later, that sliver of dirt was ours. Legally recorded, notarized, ironclad, which brings us back to this morning. The sign was my wife's idea, too. Simple black letters on a clean white board, private ranch property, access by owner only. We mounted it on fresh posts, varnished and sturdy, the kind you don't pull down without tools. When Claudia strutted up, clipboard in hand, she expected another skirmish. Instead, she found the battlefield already lost. Her voice wobbled as she pointed at the sign. "This violates Section 3F of the HOA bylaws. No member may restrict access to shared. I cut her off. Not a member, Claudia. Not shared. This road is mine. I held up the deed, the county seal glinting in the light like a shield. Recorded last month. We bought the land, which means your key doesn't work here anymore. Ever. Her face reddened, the practiced poise slipping away. You tricked us. No, my wife said, calm as ever. We just played by the rules you ignored. Behind Claudia, a small crowd of neighbors had gathered. Word traveled fast in this subdivision, faster than gossip at a church potluck. Some came with coffee mugs in hand, others just folded arms and raised eyebrows, eager to watch the spectacle. I caught snippets, whispers about overstepping, murmurs about finally getting what she deserves. The queen bee was losing her hive. Claudia tried one last stand. The HOA will contest this. We'll sue. We have resources. The way she said resources sounded less like confidence and more like a prayer. I shrugged. Be my guest, but the county deed office doesn't answer to pearl necklaces or HOA letterhead. This isn't your land. It never was. For a heartbeat, silence stretched across the gravel. Then one neighbor chuckled. Another muttered, "About time." And just like that, Claudia's grip slipped further. Her members, her loyal audience, were no longer clapping. They were questioning, doubting, whispering about recall elections. She turned sharply, heels grinding into the gravel, and stalked back toward her Lexus. But the damage was done. She didn't just lose the battle. She lost the illusion of control. As her car disappeared down the road, my wife slid her hand into mine. "You realize she's not finished," she murmured. I nodded, watching the dust trail settle behind the trees, because I knew Claudia too well. Humiliation wasn't the end for her. It was fuel. Sure enough, that afternoon I found a new envelope in the mailbox. Heavier paper. Red ink stamped across the top. Urgent. Legal action pending. The war wasn't over. Not yet.